Michael Clancy,
Here.
Linda Keller,
Here.
George Leo,
Here.
Jessica Park,
Here.
Kevin Marshall,
Here.
Don Wilcoxon.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now open the floor for public comment. If there's anyone here for public comment, please note that you're limited to 2 minutes. You can raise your hand via Zoom under the raise hand tab on the bottom, or if you're on the phone, you can raise and lower your hand using *9. Do we have anyone today for public comment?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, all right, then let's move on to our first item related to the approval of the minutes from October 12th, 2022. Are there any, is there any discussion or proposed edits with regard to the minutes prior to a motion for approval? Okay.
I'll also move.
Okay. I actually had a couple of very minor changes I wanted to raise. I apologize for not circulating these in advance. I can just go through them very briefly. On page 2, under the staff report, I think there's just a typo on the second line that indicates these annual meetings took place via with. I assume that's supposed to be via Zoom with agendas.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest that change. More substantively, when it comes to the resolution that was passed from CSBARs related to the test preparation courses, at the bottom of what on my printout is page 3 of the minutes, the brackets and asterisks indicating that the percentage maximum credits was actually not recommended from CSBARs, dropped out. So if we were just looking at this document, you would think that the CSBARs, just looking at that last piece, was recommending that maximum rather than indicating it as it had been before. So previously we had the 2 brackets and an asterisk saying that CSBARs was not actually recommending that, but this was language if the CBE so desired to adopt such a limitation.
I'm supportive of those changes.
Okay. Great. Do we have any other discussion or second on the motion to approve with those amendments?
I second that motion.
All right, great. Can we need to take the vote, please?
Yes. Clancy,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Marshall,
Aye.
Wilcoxon.
Abstain.
The motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and just for the ease of the minutes to confirm, that was Dean Leal making the motion and Dean Clancy with the second. Is that correct?
I think so. This is
All
Dean
right.
Clancy. That's correct as to the second.
Yes, great, thank you. Okay, then we can move on to the chair's report. I don't have much today, but I did want to take a moment on the record to thank our departing members of CSBARs, outgoing chair Dean J. Frickberg, committee appointee Greg Murphy, and our new CBE chair Paul Kramer, who are all very valuable members of the committee. And I also want to welcome and thank for their participation all the new members of CSBARs, which includes Dean Kevin Marshall of Laverne, our new CBE member, and Ed Standards Chair, Dr. Don Wilcoxon. Because this is the first meeting of the new committee, I invite all of the committee members to just briefly introduce yourselves. So I'll start. I'm Linda Keller. I'm Dean of Thomas Jefferson School of Law. This is my second year on CSBARs and first as chair, and I look forward to collaborating with everyone this year. With that, I'll throw it to others to jump in.
This is Michael Clancy. I'm the Dean of Northwestern California University, which is an online accredited law school in Sacramento. And I have been on this committee for 2 years.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Marshall. I'm the Dean of the University of Laverne College of Law, and this is my first year on the committee, and I look forward to participating and being engaged with all of you.
Afternoon, I'm George Leal. I'm the Dean of Irvine College of Law, and I believe this is my second year, full year as a committee member.
Don Ajane Wilcoxon. I am the co-director of our Pathway to Law School and a professor of business and entrepreneurship at Riverside City College, as well as the Educational Standards new chair.
My name is Jessica Park. I'm the vice president and dean of the School of Law at Abraham Lincoln University, which is an accredited online distance learning school registered since 1996. And I'm excited to work with you all.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that. We'll now move to staff reports. Just again, to mention, because one of our members won't be able to attend the full meeting today, I'll be changing the order of the agenda. So after Executive Director Wilson's presentation related to the State Bar Strategic Plan, we'll move, I think, quite logically to item 4, discussion and recommendation of project referrals from the CBE for the upcoming year. So with that, I will turn it over to Director Wilson for our first staff report.
Hi, and I am going to, I feel really not part of the party, so I'm putting my State Bar tile so I can join all of you. Thanks for having me at your meeting. It's nice to meet you and see you, and I am going to tee up presentation that I want to share. Sorry. So just before I kick this off and share my screen, I'll say the State Bar Board of Trustees has recently undertaken an exercise to develop its new 5-year strategic plan. The State Bar operates pursuant to a strategic plan, and the strategic plan goes in 5-year cycles. So the board recently adopted its 2022 to 2027 strategic plan. And what I'm going to do is give you a very brief overview of the plan. And I'm really going to focus on those issues that are either relevant to admissions, the admissions functions, or to your work generally as a member of a State Bar sub-entity, because there's a lot of emphasis being put on how we engage in that capacity as well. And so that part of the discussion is applicable to all State Bar sub-entities, not just CSBARs. So I'm going to walk you through it, and hopefully, as you said, Linda, this will lead to a robust discussion about your work plan. So here we go. So the strategic plan is premised or built on around 4 goal areas, and you can see them here, and they're all based fundamentally on this intention that we focus our work on protecting the public. So we do that through strengthening the attorney discipline system, enhancing access to and inclusion in the legal system, regulating the profession, and engaging partners. And we're really today going to be talking about goals 2 and 4. Importantly, the plan for the first time outlines a foundational principle, and that is a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also, for the first time, we're saying, not just is this a foundational principle with respect to our licensees or future licensees, but also with respect to our own operations, who we are as an employer, for example. So we're holding ourselves accountable to some of the same outcomes that we're seeking in others. As I mentioned, we're going to focus on goals 2 and 4. So here you can see the full articulation of the goal as well as the vision statement. I think this is important as well. So we want to increase access to the legal system through outreach and education, improved access to legal advice and services, and a legal profession that reflects the diversity of California. And the vision is that all California residents have access to high quality, affordable, and culturally competent legal advice and services. Each goal is built around, or the underpinnings of each goal are 4 strategy areas: DEI, policy and systems change, effectiveness, and consumer focus. And then underneath the strategies, yet another level down, are the actual operational plan implementing steps. And so I'm going to go through a few strategies related to goal 2. And then I'm also going to talk about the corresponding operational plan activity. And I believe that your kind of assignments or your work plan would be down at that operational plan level. So here you can see broad strategies around DEI, the law school to profession pipeline, policy and systems change, really looking at some issues around regulatory reform. And I'm not going to read it out loud to you, but we will share this deck with you as well. So moving on to effectiveness, looking at a specific strategy here, revise the bar admissions requirements to be more relevant to the practice of law in alignment with the recommendations of the Blue Ribbon Commission. If we look at the operational activity, you can see here that the bar is tasked with submitting a final report from the state bar to the Supreme Court outlining the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations. What might this mean for all of you? I'm not sure if you've been getting updates on the commission's activities, but I would hope that you're aware that, for example, the commission has voted to develop a new California specific exam. This would mean, if ultimately adopted by the Supreme Court, we would be moving away from the national conference and the MBE. A tremendous amount of work will be involved in coming up with what that new exam looks like. And so I obviously see a great deal of potential intersection or connection with your work there. Another strategy here is to increase the numbers of diverse attorneys in the profession through pipeline programs. And let me go over to the operational activities here. So, well, let me go back actually. So through legal pipeline programs, here we're focused on what is happening in law school, looking particularly at issues around retention. I know that you've been asked to provide a lot of data that I think you haven't provided historically to the bar. I believe there were some reports due maybe last year, and then we got some revised data earlier this year, and we will be able to publish early next year our first retention report that looks not just at ABA provided data, but also at data provided by the California Accredited and the registered schools. And this data that we're seeking from you and the report that we publish is all in line with the strategic plan. Other operational activities in this area relate to our new TA rules. So when we talk about access and inclusion, we're obviously looking at an effective testing accommodations process. I hope you all are aware that we have a completely new approach to testing accommodations that's being contemplated and reflected in rules that are currently out for public comment. I would expect that as leaders of legal education institutions, you will be weighing in on those. As I mentioned, intend to publish the law school retention data and really reliant on you and your good work in data collection in order to be able to publish that report. We also intend, and I think we have and will continue to survey students with respect to their experiences with law school retention programs. And I think the second to last bullet is really important. This is around, what is our value as a state bar and as an aggregator of information. I hope that one of our value adds would be an ability to share best practices with other schools. We've looked at data, we've looked at a number of retention programs, and here are the elements we see of programs that actually seem to be working in terms of retention. So I think you can expect to see that coming out of the state bar. Another DEI related strategy has to do with the Mindsets and Legal Education Initiative, the MILE program. This has had many names during the course of its implementation, including the positive mindset intervention. Hopefully you all know what I'm talking about. We have deployed this for the bar exam, and we have institutionalized it in that it is no longer a grant funded sort of ad hoc activity, but it is available to all in preparation for both the February and the July exams. And what we're looking at pursuant to the strategic plan is expanding the initiative to include first year law student examinees or baby bar test takers. And we really want to figure out how to partner with all of the law schools to encourage more participation in the program. Because talking about sort of an evidence-based initiative that works, this is one. And so we really want to see more participation in this program. Another initiative outlined in the strategic plan has to do with looking at new options for administration of the bar exam. And you can see here remote and open book formats noted. In addition, we're looking at things like giving people more time to take certain question types. And in the operational activities, you'll see a specific reference to an Access Lex study on bar exam administration modalities. Access Lex is an entity that provides grant funding to a number of different jurisdictions around a whole host of admissions related initiatives. We received funding from Access Lex to study specifically the remote administration, the open book format for test taking, and extended time, I believe, on the essays and the performance test. Those studies will take place early next year, and we will, I'm certain, if it's not on the agenda today, be talking to you about it, because there is very much a part of the study design that involves working with law schools to identify students to participate in these studies. And this obviously will tie to the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendation around development of a new exam. Because if we are able to develop a new exam, if we move away from the national conference, we would have the ability to do things like test in an open book format, return to remote testing, give people different lengths of time for various aspects of the exam. Looking sort of internally, more institutionally here, talking about implicit bias trainings for our bar exam proctors and graders. Sharing with our graders in particular, the DIF guidelines, the differential item functioning analysis that was done a couple of years ago to look at disparities in bar exam grade question development. So this has to do with sort of the quality of our grading and proctoring system. Continue to diversify the exam development and grading pool. This one is important, and I think we need help from all of you on this. We need to increase diversity. We need to increase 1, the number, 2, geographic diversity, 3, racial and ethnic diversity. And I think we're having trouble sort of within our own network of the known people that usually do this. And so we need some support around outreach to increase the diversity there. This is an exciting initiative. We are working right now with the California Commission on Access to Justice to develop a law school student loan forgiveness program. We partnered with them last legislative cycle to seek a state general fund money to fund such a program. It ultimately was not included in the budget. But the Access Commission is now working with many legal aid programs in California to talk about creating a statewide program that would essentially be funded with the funding that many of these employers are already spending on student loan forgiveness, but aggregating that money, centralizing it in sort of an Access Commission-led initiative, and ensuring that we are able to maximize the tax write-offs or reduce any negative tax implications for students participating in the program. And so if this comes to bear, this will be focused on those interested in pursuing careers in legal aid, but it's something very much being worked on at this time. So I think I explained it to you there. Law school accreditation. I think this will obviously be very near and dear to your hearts and of interest to you, of sort of a high-level strategy here. And you can see in terms of the operational activities, we're talking about performance metrics for the accredited and the unaccredited law schools, and to include a report on performance, to develop a report that would go to the board annually. To implement any recommendations from the law school retention study, those that lend themselves to being included in the accreditation process would, make sense to address as part of this strategy. And then there's a specific bullet point here regarding the unaccredited schools. And I think there is a general sense that it is time for us to take a look at the guidelines for unaccredited schools in particular. So these are all operational activities that support the higher level strategy. On to goal 4. So I went through sort of the admission specific related aspects of the strategic plan. As I mentioned, goal 4 is broadly applicable to our sub entities. And so I wanted to just touch upon some of the key elements from goal 4. See the goal here. We similarly have strategies, the same strategy headers, but the definitions and sort of the specific approaches change, because here we're really talking about communication and access to state bar policymaking. So one is we want to increase the visibility and accessibility to our meetings. And because through this work, what we've done is we've come up with a whole new set of guidelines. Some of these formally adopted by the board at its last meeting, others guidelines that will be rolled out and discussed with you. Again, I'm not sure if that's on your agenda today, but it will be for an upcoming agenda. New rules of parliamentary rules have been adopted by the board, moving away from Roberts to Rosenberg's. Roberts, you may all be aware, is several inches thick of fine print. Rosenberg's rules is less than 10 pages. So when we talk about accessibility, kind of ground zero is making sure that people understand how decision-making bodies work, and moving from Roberts to Rosenberg's was part of that. The board also adopted new standards, and these are included in the board policy manual around public comment. And so there are new requirements for how you guys will all need to receive written and oral public comment, and how public comment will be shared with you prior to meetings. So a host of initiatives in this broad area of access to meetings that, if they have not been shared with you already, will be in your coming meetings. This one I wanted to highlight in terms of how the State Bar wants to position itself. We'd like to lean more into our successes. Obviously, we get a lot of publicity for our failures, but we think that in many areas of the bar, we do great work. And so we'd like to be better at making visible our role as an incubator for innovation. And so I share this one here because in any of the things that you've done with State Bar, either on this committee or others, that you feel are particularly proud of or reflect great work, I'd like you to lift those up and elevate those to staff so that we can as well, because I think this is something that gets lost sometimes when, particularly on our end, we're responding to a lot of negative headlines often. And I'll highlight that in 2027, the last year of this strategic plan, the State Bar will be enjoying its 100th anniversary. And so leading up to that was a great opportunity to kind of highlight some of the accomplishments and simply changes that have occurred over the last 100 years. Create and sustain partnerships. This aspect of the strategic plan relates to the fact that the State Bar cannot be effective if it acts alone. We need partners, and you'll see a long list here, partnering with other organizations. You see in the final bullet, like using AIMS to beef up our ability to interact with law schools and partner with law schools. But I think the bottom line is that we really understand that we are only effective as our overall network, and that network needs to include entities and stakeholders like all of you, like your students, like other law affiliated organizations and community-based organizations, which we really haven't done such a great job of tapping into. Demonstrate transparency. This is another really important sort of value in the strategic plan that I want to highlight to all sub-entities. Our goal is to be a transparent organization. And so when you are engaging in your work as a committee and sort of representing the bar to the extent that you do, we encourage transparency, obviously as limited by law, right? We can't violate any laws of confidentiality. But I think this is the board kind of putting its stake in the ground, saying that we don't want to be known as an organization that is sort of hiding the ball or makes decisions in a non-transparent way. Expansion of multilingual content and outreach. Again, this falls in line with access. This is important. And so you will see increasing efforts on our part to ensure that at least the top 6 languages in California are represented. Our materials are translated into those languages. This also relates to stakeholders. I mentioned this earlier, so I'm not going to go through it again, but our partnerships are our power and our effectiveness. And so this strategic plan recognizes that. Diverse voices in the development and evaluation of State Bar policy. This strategy really has to do with who we hear from. We have heretofore had public members on most of our committees. These are non-attorney members. They've often been a real minority on committees other than the board itself, where public members are nearly half. You will see changes. I think you will see increasingly a push to have more and more non-attorney members on state entities. You will also see when we put things out for public comment, an effort to truly engage the public or the impacted stakeholder in providing public comment. So for example, rules that are out for public comment right now related to testing accommodations, the moral character process, a couple of other admissions related rules that are out for public comment. We will be trying to outreach through you to law students to get them to weigh in. We want to hear from you. So this is the kind of increased effort that you will see in a variety of different areas to truly hear from those who are impacted by policy. And I think that's the end of both goal 2 and goal 4. So I know that was a lot. Hopefully it's given you a lot of ideas, and I'm happy to answer any questions or any feedback that you guys have. That would be great.
Thank you very much. Any of the committee members want to take up the effort of asking questions? Yes, Dean Park.
Just thank you so much for that presentation. I think especially with how the world is changing, I think just all the reflection that that a regulatory entity like the State Bar of California is seeing those changes and being responsive to it, and also being a leader in it, is very important. So it's exciting to hear about this, and thank you for taking the time to do this. I did have 2 comments to this, and I just thought it would be helpful to share. I think it's great that we're looking at a simpler rule set for the running of our meetings and for decision making. I just very much encourage, and I'll make sure to look more in what's being updated, and it may be already reflected there. But just I want to emphasize, especially in this time when there is more remote meetings occurring, that a lot of attention and care is given for that public comment period. I know it's so hard to get all the voices in there and kind of think of assessing priority along with making sure the opportunity is equally accessible. But just that consideration for longer time where it is very warranted by the circumstances, and that there is that advance notification. I am definitely someone through my committee work, whenever I get to talk to a member of the public. I was at a LACBA town hall meeting that I was invited by a law student recently, virtual. I make sure to talk about where the public comment guidelines URLs are at the State Bar website, and just helping those who want to give good input, make sure to know about the rules for the process. But I just want to be sure, as we're updating and involving that there continue to be those links. I think those are very important for the public. And I think it very much impacts their confidence that their inputs can be properly weighed, and that they know with enough advance time that they can take the opportunity to do that. So thank you.
Great. That's great feedback. And I do, I can talk to staff about when a presentation on sort of these new guidelines will be shared with you. But I think you'll be pleased. There's been a lot of attention paid to the public comment piece, both the in-person and Zoom, and the remote meetings. So I hopefully you'll find it responsive to your concerns.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, great. And if you don't mind, I'd love to just sit in for a little bit on your meeting. I haven't been able to do that so far.
Yes, absolutely. Particularly given our next item, that would be great. So as I said, in the interest of moving discussion along with regard to item 4, when all of the members of the committee are available, we're going to move now to discussing item 4, the project referrals to the CSBARs from the CBE for 2023. I believe that Natalie Leonard will present some further information, but just to tee up the subject, we're not going to actually be discussing any referrals from the CBE today. Instead, I think we'll have a chance to get a further sense of anticipated topics of interest from the CBE. And from our discussion, I'll be able to get a sense of CSBAR's thoughts on what suggestions we might have for me to bring to the CBE meeting on Friday. As you may have noticed, the CBE agenda for Friday does include information about planning session and a PowerPoint slides about potential planning. However, I believe Ms. Leonard has informed me that those PowerPoint slides, if I understood it correctly, may be still in revision stage. So at this point, we're looking at maybe a more high-level discussion related to suggestions about metrics on law school performance, some of the rules that were alluded to earlier, as well as the law school engagement. But with that, I'll ask Ms. Leonard to provide any further context you might be able to.
Okay, thank you, Chair Keller. And welcome, Dean Marshall, to CSBARs. And thank you, Leah, for joining us and being a part of this portion of the presentation. So for the benefit of our newest members, also Professor Wilcoxon. Each year in the fall, the CBE undertakes a planning process. It often happens in October and January. So those of you who have been on the commission for a while may be thinking back to that period. This year, that planning process is happening in December. And part of what the CBE is doing at that time is firming up its goals, its work plan for the year. And so Leah will be joining the CBE on Friday, talking about the strategic plan, and the committee will be talking about their strategic initiatives that will roll forward from that plan. And of course, CSBARS is an integral part of that work plan. And so it would be helpful to get a little bit of background about what is on your mind that the CBE may not yet have been thinking about in a few particular areas. The first one is the area of metrics. When the state bar is regulating law schools, what are the metrics that should be used when evaluating law school performance and law school success, and the ways that the state bar can support the law schools in effectuating their mission? This is especially important to think about any time, but we've seen so many changes in legal education in general since the pandemic, and we are very interested to see as we come out of the pandemic what will be continuing. Many of you saw recently the article in the ABA Journal about online education and some different thoughts about how well that is working. You may also have seen several schools opt out of the U.S. News and Report rankings for law schools this year. You've seen the ABA consider the role of the LSAT and admissions. So really, so many things are being discussed, and so many things were already discussed here through this commission as you created the recommendation for the new rule set. So one area to think about is metrics. A second area, the core function of CSBARS, is looking at the accredited and unaccredited rules. You've been spending a lot of time talking about the accredited rule set. You're 1 year into the 2-year transition. This year, you'll begin talking about the unaccredited rules. And then finally, what is the best way to continue to engage with law schools and, by extension, law students? We know that it has been really helpful to partner with the law schools in a number of ways. For example, the Friday e-blasts with law schools, which were new this past year during the pandemic. Changing the format of the law school assembly and registrar's meeting to online. That allows us to do interactive demos and to allow more geographic participation, et cetera. So I wanted to open it up to suggestions as to the various 3 areas, perhaps starting with metrics. You've all just finished the annual report, thinking a lot about metrics at your schools. And I'd be interested to know if the schools have been considering the types of metrics we are using today and the types of things you think that the state bar should be looking at as well. So that will be topic 1. And I'm also in particular interested in a perspective from Dean Leal, having seen this process from both sides.
I'm sorry, Natalie, say again.
Sure, thinking about metrics, the kind of metrics that the state bar uses to help evaluate the law school's performance and effectiveness. What do you think about the sorts of things that we haven't been looking at to date that we should add?
Well, just giving it a real quick thought. I mean, the hot button item and metric that gets discussed a lot is attrition. And I think what I would like to see, and maybe this is, I hope, helpful, is a better definition of what the state bar considers to be attrition and what schools consider to be attrition. Because I think every dean here, has personal firsthand experience with students who, for a variety of reasons, often having nothing to do with the program they're enrolled in, are no longer able to stay enrolled, particularly when you have working adults and full-time employees, and trying to add on a part-time job that requires them to put 25 plus hours a week into school. So because I think we get lumped, that phrase, and I know talking to other deans, and when site visits have been taking place and schools have sought accreditation, questions have been raised about, look at your attrition rate. This is someone asking the dean of a registered unaccredited school. And I'll be frank to say that I think those questions are often very unfair in terms of how it gets reported back to the committee. So definitely better define some of the metrics that get applied that are very central to either a school becoming accredited or staying accredited. And attrition, I think, maybe because it starts with A, might be the first thing to have a deeper dive in, because for a school to be looked upon in a negative sense when there's a quote high attrition rate without any better understanding of why students withdraw or dropped out or attrit, I think would go a long way to perhaps provide a better understanding to the committee and the board about what's going on in our schools.
And toward that end, I want to thank the law schools here and also in the audience who participated in the reporting for the annual report this year, where we are beginning to record not only what the attrition is, but the student stated reasons for departure, so that we can, for the first time, begin to tease apart some of those different reasons. And I think that's going to be very valuable data for your school to use at the individual level, but also to report at the category level. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful because I think, it would be illustrative to see how many of our students who are, capable or properly admitted, who even may be doing well in school, can't stay enrolled for 4 years for various reasons. The last, for everyone's knowledge, obviously the last 2 or 3 years have been very challenging for lots of different reasons, both due to the pandemic and economics. So that would be, I think, a start. Now, whether there are other key metrics that could be better defined, I guess would be a good topic of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe can I just step back from it and try and get a better sense in my own head of what we're talking about. So when we're talking about metrics to assess law school performance, are we talking about the annual report? Are we talking about some sort of new process that might be implemented? Are we talking about the disclosure form, or some or all of those?
Thinking about, so during this transition period, you may have noticed the annual reports didn't change too much other than to add the retention measures, but we are thinking about how should those annual reports and disclosures look in the future. So it's likely those metrics could be there, or they could be a part of the inspection process, for example. And so really it could be any of those.
Okay.
And if I could add, it ought to be a two-way street, because I know all of us spent more time this year compiling the data and reporting the data. And maybe it's me, I missed it, is a better explanation from the committee and staff as to how that data is going to be used and what decisions will be made, particularly other than with DEI in mind and all that. So it would maybe be helpful at some point to have some discussion from staff or committee to the deans, or to maybe that's a law school assembly or law school council subject matter. But it would be interesting and helpful to know, where that, how and when that data is going to be used going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would second that. Dean Park, please go ahead.
Well, thank you. I think the discussion about metrics is definitely interesting, especially when attached to comprehensive. My perspective on that, and this comes from being part of a institutional stakeholder committee with the Distance Education Accrediting Commission for 6 years and 3 years as the chair of the standards committee there, is that there needs to be a lot of sensitivity when you use the word metrics, which I think is a great thing. Evidence-based improvement is always a wonderful thing, but it is attached to mission. And I think a great question to ask here, because I think it's a great topic, is as the committee of bar examiners and the board is going over the mission of the state bar and the way it evolves and can be clarified. What ways can that be used to become an input, I think, for the law schools and their discussion of mission? To me, when it comes, especially to being in higher education institution, I'm sure everyone here can weigh in on that. This is a great group to do that. We can all have unique missions that define very much who we're serving, who we're recruiting, and who we are working with to provide optimal access to their opportunity for legal education. And one thing I always felt that I struggled with in terms of even the annual reports is like, we're never asked about our mission. We're never asked about those sort of those crucial things about a law school that's normally part of a quality review process that then helps sort of inform everything else and even helps informs the kind of metrics we keep. But that being said, I think the peer review accreditation process for example, DEAC or WASC, it is different from the context of a more regulatory compliance, which I really see the State Bar of California doing with the law school. So I bring this up really just as input for the conversation. And, you know, I think depending on what you think the context is, are you coming at this more thinking about institutions working through peer review to improve on what they deliver to students? Or are you coming more from that higher regulatory stance? I think mission definitely influences any discussion about metrics. And I think if I could just put a point to what I'm saying, any flexibility to the fact that educational institutions will have different missions would be highly appreciated. I think we can all work on presenting similar metrics. I really love that there was that data related person that was offered by the State Bar for the latest cycle of annual report. I would love to see more of that. But I think even when we're going through the methodology, just that there is some flexibility that when we can give the data, we can talk about it in the context of what might be a unique mission at the law school.
Great, thank you. Dean Marshall.
Yes, I just, what I'm about to say is a reiteration of what I think we've already heard, so I apologize. And thank you, Jessica, for your comments, because my background is also econometrics and statistics, and I'm really driven by data analysis and data-informed decision-making. But before you can talk about the metric, I think as Jessica pointed out, it's the context. What are we trying to measure? And what is that mission? And typically it is the mission, right? We call it operationalizing some kind of social construct. So when Natalie, you brought up this question, it's one of those questions that we go down rabbit holes all the time when we're trying to measure social phenomenon, but we have to go back with that starting point. What is the social phenomenon that we're trying to measure? And I see multiple levels. I see the State Bar mission and our role in serving that State Bar mission. And so there's a metric that's very relevant to that. It seems to me that mission is expressed not only and manifests itself in the State Bar's strategic planning, but also it's expressed in those accreditation standards, right? So is that metric tied to an accreditation standard, and is it relevant to measuring that standard? I mean, I say this because the word attrition came up, and then the word attrition is a construct, right? And does that attrition itself show a high performing school, or does it show a low performing school? Because you could take arguments on both sides of that. Is it a positive thing or is it a negative thing that the school is being responsible about the programming that it gives? So I love this conversation. I love the fact that you have a state bar mission. I love Jessica pointing out, then you have the individual schools with separate missions. And so I think the key to this conversation is always starting kind of at that foundational level of what it is that we are trying to measure or test in terms of a hypothesis, in terms of the construct first, the metrics then follows. And then of course, we could all disagree about whether the metrics is actually measuring that social phenomenon. But I think this is going to be a great conversation, and those would be my comments.
And Chair Keller, might I pose an additional question to Dean Marshall?
Mhm.
Not to put you on the spot, but I know this is something you think a lot about, Dean Marshall. At your school, you have a particularly robust model for tracking bar exam passage and predictive bar exam passage in the future. I wonder if that has given you any insight into how you think about mission and choices and evaluate those metrics at your school, that we could think about, that could help us at the state bar, or that can help other schools.
Yeah, I really do think that it could be generalized across schools and even generalized upstream to the institution. The key to it, at the University of Laverne, we've tracked lots of data and performed the classic regression models to see what needles are really moving bar exam success at the end of that road. And we're even going to start redeveloping it now that we have, as many of you may or may not know, we resigned voluntarily our ABA accreditation to go to the Cal Bar model. And so the whole infrastructure and the curricular infrastructure, the teaching infrastructure has changed organizationally in some ways, that we will not graduate our first Cal Bar student until this upcoming spring, for example. And that will now tie to a number of other inputs, the ways we've changed the curriculum, the required curriculum versus elective curriculum. But at the end of the day, one of the things we discovered in the ABA while we were operating with all that ABA data was bar pass rate was not statistically significantly linked to LSAT, for example, at all. And SAT, when we were an ABA school, that LSAT predictor played such a big role in admissions evaluation. So absolutely, Natalie, I think there's a lot of ways that we could use, even share our model, but also share and explore the data now that we're collecting new data, in some ways refine data under the annual report. So, but you also have to be careful because it's just a statistical model and there's a lot of spurious correlations and errors can still be made. But I'm sorry, everybody, but Natalie kind of got my juices flowing with the additional question because I kind of live in the school.
And part of what I was thinking about was back to the time when your school was deciding. And I remember you sharing that data, looking at the community you wanted to serve, the demographic profile you wanted to serve, the prices you wanted to charge, all of those things, and then really making a concerted evidence-based decision. It was a really high quality use of metrics, and we're looking forward to the graduation results this year.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dean Liao, would you like to add?
Yeah, to further the discussion. So one of my thoughts as I was watching, reading through each of Leah's PowerPoint slides was, whether or not, or to the degree there's integration at the staff level, committee level, and then going to the schools with regard to the various goals that the board and now the committee have adopted. And I'll specifically refer to DEI. which I think we all agree is a incredibly important one that we all strongly support. And my question is this: is whether or not there's any behind the scenes discussion of how they get integrated into these other various metrics. And I'll give you a rock solid example. I've got an admissions committee meeting Friday at 5 with my faculty. We'll probably review 25, maybe 30 applicants. And I'll tell you right now, we're not going to admit people we might otherwise admit. Most of those who we deny are people of color, because we're concerned with what staff might think 2 or 3 years from now with regard to attrition. And we don't, and so the idea that we could be doing a better job of DEI if we're giving, as we're proud to say, we're an opportunity program, and yet, we live within a strictly enforced regulatory environment. So, and I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying to the degree that, for instance, you've got a committee looking at the first year exam, to what level are they trying to advance DEI in their review of the first year exam? And it would go to my pet project, which I've mentioned to Natalie more than once, is a real good look at whether or not the committee should do to the first year exam what the Supreme Court did to the cut score on the bar exam. Because a change in the cut score on the first year exam, even in a small way, I think for all the registered unaccredited schools would make a significant difference in who remains enrolled and has an opportunity, hopefully someday, to graduate and take and pass the bar exam. But to getting back to my original comment, so you've got all these very noble and I think very worthy goals that the committee, staff, and the board are trying to achieve. But it's hard on this side to see how and whether there's integration between those goals. Or transparency is another one. And so I would, at some point, if we had a discussion that, or some thought and planning to how that might happen, better integration of the various goals as reflected in either better definitions of the metrics, a change in the metrics. To Dean Marshall's point, the classic example is LSAT scores and bar passage rates. So we've seen really clear examples of what was thought of as being an absolutely empirically sound metric. Turns out it isn't all that sound, and it isn't all that helpful. So that would be, I think, helpful overall in a very global sense.
Okay, great. Dean Marshall.
I promise this will be my last comment on this. But George, you made a point there again in bringing up that phrase attrition, which and there's concern. Obviously, sounds like there's concern, and maybe I'm finding it a bit surprising because attrition is a metric. So we're all looking at it as some sort of metric, but what is it measuring? And so I kind of alluded to this in my initial comments. On the one hand, attrition might be the poor for performing curriculum or poor for performing service-oriented learning community. But on the other hand, it is also a metric for the consumer protection mission of the State Bar. And that standard where we are given the responsibility of determining as soon as possible whether somebody has the chops or the grit or the capacity to study law in that way. So again, we throw attrition out as some kind of metric, but until we decide what it is we're trying to measure, that metric goes in two directions, doesn't it? So I just throw that out again as part of this conversation.
Well, and I know Dean Clancy, you got your hand up. And to your point, Dean Marshall, that's exactly right. I think historically attrition, it's been a one-way street. If a school has a high attrition rate, what's wrong with the school? And that's the battle that I'm going to fight, which is, to your point, attrition should be and often is a very nuanced. There are many reasons why people attrit out of any school's program, and to have it used in a very sort of binary, good or bad, right or wrong kind of way, I think is ultimately doesn't serve the purpose of that particular metric. And I guess that's what you're saying.
Great. Yes, Dean Clancy.
Yes, I just wanted to focus for a moment on my type of school. my type of school has high attrition. That's a reality that's known to so many people who are in education, but not to all prospective students. When prospective students look at the BNP 61.7 report for our school, they see the attrition numbers, but they don't have a good context for them. They don't know that most of the attrition is not caused for academic reasons or for misconduct. In other words, not because of misconduct dismissals, not because of academic dismissals, but instead because life just gets in the way for the vast majority of the people who fall by the wayside. So if the numbers on the BNP 61.7 report were to include columns that would allow us to place numbers to show that the attrition breaks down into these other categories, the prospective students would have a lot to think about that would be most relevant to whether or not they should enroll. They look at pass rates for sure, but believe you me, they are looking at the attrition numbers as well.
Okay, thank you. And Dean Park.
I just wanted to follow up with what was said about evaluation and sort of link it to some of the earlier dialogue we had. And I really appreciate everything that's been said. I really think mission came up as a big word in context with metrics. And I do think evaluation is sort of a good big word after metrics, like mission, metrics, evaluation. I think we're all very interested. These three things are critical, I think, for getting everyone on the same page to talk about and articulate success or data-based improvement in the same way. But I think there's definitely questions about flexibility to different missions. Of course, there's a limit to that as well, I'm sure. But that I do think it's good to be inclusive of different missions at law schools. And in the metrics that we have, I think it is important to know how they're evaluated, especially if it is for an accreditation or registration level. The last thing I wanted to say with that is something that comes up a lot at with different accreditation bodies is just even the idea of risk-adjusted metrics. And I would appreciate and like to mention that. And of course, no one wants to say, like when you're taking in, let's say, that's there was a presentation about that, talking about the healthcare world, where you might have risk-adjusted metrics because you're taking patients who are having complex histories to work through. You don't necessarily want to punish people for working with people with those histories, but of course, that's an area of dialogue. But I just mentioned that risk-adjusted metrics may be there. For example, and this is something I've said a lot, you know, our students at the online unaccredited level, they must complete 48 to 52 weeks of study or 24 to 26 weeks of study. And we're going to give the same attrition metrics as everyone else. There's not usually a place to give a long footnote, but when we're trying to work for working adults, and yet even these great working adults, they can't predict their life for the next 48 to 52 weeks between jobs or car accidents or pregnancies or all these sorts of things. I think it's great to measure and evaluate, but just have that flexibility and make sure when you're using the metrics and evaluation, you're not crushing the opportunity for the people who need it. You're not discouraging people who are trying to open opportunity to people that that others may not be trying to give access to for other reasons. So.
Great, thank you. So just in terms of trying to summarize this briefly for the CBE, some of the highlights that I've heard, I think, start with kind of big picture in terms of saying, okay, we're talking about metrics, but metrics, you know, for what are we trying to evaluate? What is the context? How does that fit in with the mission, whether it be the mission of school or the mission of the bar itself, in terms of also looking at the interaction between the goals and metrics and the potential for cross purposes there, and trying to clarify with a specific example of attrition of, you know, what exactly are we trying to measure there? How do we display it or provide information for it to be most useful and accurate? Does that fairly well capture the discussion, or are there other things that you think I should emphasize?
I think you did a great job. The only sentence I would add is, how is this used for evaluation? I think that's important to the law schools, and it does link up to, you know, the clarity of rules we have for each level and how they're applied.
Okay. All right. Anything else there? All right, great. Any final comments on that before we move on? So we have some time for the other staff reports. All right, great. So then let's switch back to our staff reports. First up, we have a report on the law school annual reports.
Okay, thanks, Dean Keller. So just wanted to confirm that the annual report deadline was November 15th. We generally have all of the reports in right now. There are a couple of schools where we're working with them specifically to complete those reports, but I feel like it was a very successful return, and we are very interested in your feedback. This year we added a couple of new components. The special meeting with either my team or possibly additionally the Orion group. We also added Friday afternoon study halls where people could drop in and listen or drop in and ask questions. And we would really appreciate your feedback on any of those elements if they helped you along the way. Okay, so that's what I have as to the annual report.
Okay. Great, not seeing any hands, then move on to a report on implementation of the amended unaccredited guideline 1.11, the bar exam programs offered for credit, which all of the continuing members are very familiar with.
That's true. Certainly would like to thank the members of CSBARs past and present for the recommendations related to that. The amendment to the guideline has been chaptered. It has been posted as part of the unaccredited guidelines on the State Bar's website, and of course is effective. So those schools that were previously offering a bar review program for credit would list it under the waiver section on this past annual report, but going forward, it's something that all of the unaccredited schools will have access to, and we'll be talking with the schools individually to see the individual choices they've been making now that that option is available to offer a bar review class for credit or a first-year law students exam review for credit. I want to thank everyone for the robust and thoughtful discussion here that helped to make that happen.
Great, thank you. Next, we'll move on to the report on the first year law students examination. And I just want to thank Audrey Ching and Lisa Cummings for your patience in the moving around of the agenda today.
Oh, no problem. Great conversation. I have a quick update. So as you know, we had the first year law students exam on October 25th. We had 284 applicants approved to take that exam. The exam was administered primarily remotely, but we had a small number testing at Prometric in-person test centers and an even smaller number at our State Bar office in Los Angeles. This was our first exam using Prometric. It's a different vendor for us to deliver the test. And what we use when we use Prometric versus ExamSoft is a live proctoring model. We really appreciate all the feedback we've received from the schools. We've also received a lot of feedback from applicants. And if you could help us remind applicants and your students who took the exam that we have a post-exam survey that closes December 9th that we've sent out to all the 284 approved to take the exam, and we've sent several reminders. But I would love to get, as much participation in that survey as possible, so we really have a lot of feedback to aggregate about all their experiences taking this exam with a different vendor. The vast majority of test takers had no issues at all with the remote test, but a small number were unable to complete a section of the exam due to issues on the prometric end, and those test takers were allowed to retake those sections. A large plus side that we've now had time to review from the exam and with this live proctoring model is that when we're looking at incidents related to the exam, because they have live proctors monitoring through the webcam, they can address issues like there's paper on your desk, you have a cell phone out, there's a water bottle, all those kinds of issues. They can assist the applicants in clearing all of that out before the live test sessions start. So we've already gone through all the incident reports, and our Chapter 6 violations, which is what we call our exam rule violations, are almost zero for this exam. So definitely a large learning curve using a new model, but I would say that's a plus side to the live proctoring.
Audrey, I have to say that that's great news because, again, this is a thing that turns deans either becoming bald or having more gray hair or another double chin. One of our best students in the prior exam, I think in June, I was shocked to find out. I mean, despite being told by faculty and myself, he was given, a Chapter 6 violation because he was using a scratch piece of paper, and of course, for the entire exam. And it's like, you would just ask yourself, and he was expected to pass. He didn't, of course, and we haven't heard. We hope he passed October, but how he had a live proctor that said, "Oh, and by the way, you shouldn't have a scratch piece of paper next to you," might have saved him, maybe 6 months of his life and having passed. But that's a great improvement. So I'm really pleased to hear that.
I think that's a big plus. I know it took a lot of getting used to in this exam because they do, and maybe you've seen it if you guys all work at universities and maybe you've used it, but they have to do the room scan and show their desk. And I think that was a real learning curve for the test takers because that's not at all how you do the record and review style with ExamSoft. But to catch things like that and to not penalize someone who might have just been totally spacing out on what they were supposed to do is a big upside. Dean Park?
I just wanted to echo that it's great that there is almost zero Chapter 6 violations. I think the stress that both the students and then the students reaching out to the law schools for that, just making sure those are, very thoughtfully reviewed and minimized if possible is great. I had about 6 students in a relatively small cohort reach back to the law school about concerns. I think it's great that there's that post-exam survey. So I'll definitely be encouraging them, whatever they have reflected back to the school, that they make sure to weigh in. I think the nature of their concerns, a lot of it was related to the technology or the proctors. So just so you know.
Great, and as much detail as possible on the survey. We really are looking at all the responses, all the qualitative ones with the comments are super helpful too, because this was new for all of us. So thank you.
Yes,
Based on Audrey, on a survey, it just occurred to me, it would be, I think, very helpful to me and other deans of registered schools if staff could give us a top 10 list of issues that concern the students taking exam. I mean, I'm handicapped, and I think my colleagues are handicapped. I've never taken a remote exam, and it's we had students who have taken it to try to give some feedback. But it would be interesting to see what helpful hints perhaps we could glean from the responses to say this is an issue, be aware of this, or so. If you can do that at some later date and either send it to all the schools just by an email, or that would be, I think, very, very, I would pass it along immediately to my students who are going to take the next exam.
Yeah, I think so. Again, it closes on December 9th and we'll look at aggregating all that data. And so there's no reason we couldn't share that with you.
Thank you.
All right, great. So I think we can move on then to the report on the PLP. Audrey, you're still up.
I will be providing that report.
Okay, sorry.
Amy's up.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong
That's okay.
list, I guess.
No problem. Let me open a PowerPoint that I have for the team. 1 second. Okay, so today what I'll be doing is presenting the options that were presented to the Board of Trustees. There were recommendations, staff recommendations that were developed, discussed at the Board of Trustees meeting in November, with the idea that there are some recommendations that have been forwarded to the Supreme Court as a result. So let me start by just talking about, hold on 1 second, page down. Just to remind everybody, refresh everybody's memory about the two distinct programs that are part of provisional licensure. So the two groups that have been participating in the PLP program include the first group was the 2020 graduating cohorts. So again, this is a group that was, the program was formulated around the unique circumstances that were surrounding around that time related to COVID, with the uncertainty and the delay in the bar exam administration. This program was put into place and with the intention of it to be a temporary limited license program. Again, it was open to 2020 law graduates. There were requirements that were put in place, obviously the supervision requirement to ensure public protection, as well as other educational requirements that are in California Rule of Court 9.49. It was launched in November of 2020, and it was scheduled to sunset in June 1st of this year. And it's been extended to the end of the year, December 31st, 2022. In that group, a total of 912 participants participated in the original program, of which 645 have become fully licensed. 17 are on the way to do that. That is, they've been certified and just need to get sworn in. About 77 have been either suspended or terminated, and which leaves us a remainder of 173 active participants as of November. Now, there was a separate, there was an extension to that program, and this is the pathway, what we refer to as a pathway program. It was launched a few months after the original program, so in February 2021. And this was open to anybody who scored anywhere between a 1390 and a 1439, either at first read, second read, or as a total scaled score between these exam cycles of July 2015 through February 2020. So unlike the original program, this is a pathway to licensure. So people participating in this program, if they met all the program requirements, they would be able to get fully licensed. Those requirements included the basic licensing requirements, but they also had to work under the supervision of an attorney for a minimum of 300 hours and had to receive a positive evaluation from their supervising attorney or attorneys in the case that somebody reported to multiple supervisors. This was also scheduled to terminate on June 1st and has been extended till the end of the year. There were a total of 673 participants, people who were approved to participate. 533 have been licensed through that pathway. 32 have been suspended or terminated. 53 active participants remain in that program. Of those 53, 18 have pending completion of hours. So it's just a matter of completing hours before they become licensed. And 11 have pending. We are waiting to receipt of a positive supervisor evaluation. Now, as we're formulating staff recommendations, these are some of the considerations that were in mind as we were developing them. One is an open-mindedness to the challenges faced by participants in completing the program. That was how the original PLP program was extended, is in recognition of the challenges that were faced, that graduating cohorts were facing around the time of the pandemic. Also, we had to make sure that public protection was not negatively impacted, which is how the programs were designed, you know, with all the various requirements. For example, with MPRE, if you had not sat for the MPRE, you could satisfy that requirement just for the program participation by taking the 4 hours of ethics training of the new attorney training in lieu of an MPRE. However, an MPRE is still required in order to become licensed. Also, one of the factors is fairness. We want to be fair to those who are eligible for the pathway and who never received notice of the program due to a state bar error. So we try to send an email to all applicants that were eligible for the pathway, and unfortunately were not able to do so. So the last couple of considerations include a recognition that at the end of the pandemic, it doesn't mean that we're returning to exactly how things were done before, that we should learn and follow from the innovations that were instituted. Also, increasing openness that a traditional bar exam is not the only way to demonstrate minimum competence. So these are the options that were presented to the board and that they approved to be advanced to the Supreme Court. The first is to extend the pathway, not only to extend the pathway, but also to reopen it to those that were eligible but did not receive notice from the California State Bar. The other consideration or proposal is to extend the original pathway for more opportunities to pass the bar exam. So that is extending it for maybe another year or two to allow more opportunities for passing the bar. That's still a requirement for original original PLPs. The third option is to extend the original program and develop a pilot supervised practice program for those that are remaining in the PLP as of November. The fourth is to extend the original program and develop a permanent alternative licensure status so that this group would serve as that cohort that we would study what a permanent alternative licensure status would look like. And the last one is to extend the original pathway and allow remaining participants just to take the attorney's exam, that is to sit for the 1 day rather than the 2-day bar exam. So this is a little background on each of these. So again, this is option 1. These are some of the values that were considered. Who the eligibility would be eligible for. So this is extending and reopening the pathway. It'd be eligible to only those who pass the MPRE, who have a positive moral character determination, and who have completed the 10-hour new attorney training, which was one of the program requirements that had to be completed within the first year. Again, this is in recognition that some we failed to provide notice to. And also there was a survey that went out, 3 surveys that actually went out to anybody who was a former or in October, a current PLL member about the program itself, as well as to the and those who were eligible but did not participate. So those 3 surveys also informed some of the recommendations that you see here. Option 2 was to extend the original program and also require the California bar exam. It would be only eligible to those, those that have passed the MPRE would be eligible for this, also who have a positive moral character determination and completed the 10 hours of new attorney training. Option 3 also is to extend the original program and to use this cohort through a supervised practice pilot. And so it would be a small controlled pilot that would allow us to gather empirical information that could inform, the Supreme Court about looking at an alternate bar exam alternate program for licensing. The fourth is to extend the original program and to make this a permanent alternate licensure status. Other states have adopted this type of limited scope of work licensing. Some of those states are identified here, but it would be this alternate license involves permanent supervision and limited scope of work, just to ensure that it does not negatively impact public protection. Lastly, the fifth option is to extend the original program. And again, as I mentioned previously, is to simply allow these applicants who've been working as provisionally licensed attorneys the ability to sit for the one-day exam rather than the two-day. So they would not be taking the multiple choice section of the MBE, just the essays and the PT. So with that, I'm wondering if there are any questions. Oh, yes. Hi, Dean Clancy.
Yes, I have one. Regarding option number 3, that includes, as the first component of it, extending the original program. Is that the original pathway program that you're talking about, or the other program?
The any reference to original is the graduating cohort.
All
The
right.
pathway is those that have already sat for a bar exam and achieved a new cut score for an exam between July 2015 and 2020.
All right, but it wouldn't involve a pathway to practice, option 3, for the, meaning without a bar exam. Or I'm sorry, with those who scored in between those two scores. In other words, what I'm asking is does it incorporate option 1?
So yeah, they're all independent of each other, so that they've all been advanced.
So they're mutually exclusive then.
Exactly.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say it seems so fair to me that option 1 be approved. In other words, correcting a mistake. My hope was that option 3 included option 1 so that correcting that mistake would happen, but also we'd have this other group to study.
Well, and both can happen. I mean, I think that what your suggestion about perhaps allowing graduating cohorts to become permanently licensed, the closest to that is option 4. This is a permanent alternative licensure, because unlike the those who have sat and passed the bar exam, or you passed at least achieved the current cut score, some of these applicants have not sat for a bar exam, and they clearly have not passed the exam. So that's why there's this alternative for an alternative licensure status. It wouldn't be full licensure.
All right, well, my focus, I guess, in this, and maybe I'm not stating it very articulately, but my focus is on the group of people who were not included in the program or who didn't take advantage of it because they never got notice.
Yes.
So the only option that will help them is option number 1. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I hope I didn't confuse you. All right.
Did not. Thanks.
Sure. Hi, Dean Park. You have a question?
Yes, I know that the beginning of the provisional licensure program really came due to the pandemic circumstances, and I'm grateful that there was that flexibility. It does mean that it's a shorter time to collect data about what minimum competence means for this pathway. And I was just curious, what is the status on that in terms of, like, I know when the program was started, there was more of an accelerated time frame, I think, to come up with the sequence of what these participants must do. But has there been a way to try to study how equivalent that is in terms of assessing minimum competence to the exam pathway?
So let me see if I understand your question. So for the original cohort, has there been a way to determine whether minimum competence has been established by merely participating in the program and not having to sit for a bar exam?
Like, I know it's an accelerated time frame, but if we say that the exam pathway has its metrics for minimum competence, have we had enough data to say what the equivalent is for this pathway?
You know what, we haven't, and I think that's why we have this, there hasn't been enough time. And I think that's why, you know, if you look at also how many remaining participants we have 173 remaining participants. And the fact remains that we need more time to study to determine whether enough practice would get them to, is sufficient to provide the minimum competence required to practice, which is how these other alternatives were developed. Option 3 as well as option 4. That is would grant the applicants more time to practice under as a supervised attorney, and the state bar to collect information to inform us about whether minimum competence has been established through this work without having to sit for a bar exam altogether.
Got it. I definitely was curious about that just in terms of post-licensure outcomes. I was curious if other states that have done this, if they have developed any kind of equivalent data as well. So thank you for that.
Sure, no problem. All right, Dean Keller.
I was wondering if you could just address how these might fit with regard to the Blue Ribbon Commission and what some of they're considering. I know there was a quick mention of treating one of these as kind of a pilot program. If you could say a few more words on that, that would be great.
Sure. So as you know, that the Blue Ribbon Commission was asked to look at not only the format and the scope of the bar exam changing, but also to provide recommendations on the potential for a bar alternative, a bar exam alternative pathway to licensure. So that was discussed at multiple meetings. So all of the factors that contribute to that. What would that program look like? Does it start in law school? What kind of experiential training would be required? How would we incorporate, for example, CAPA recommendations into the experiential training? How much supervised practice is required? And I already mentioned, where would it start? Also, should there be some kind of either capstone project or assessment that's required for consistency from one applicant to the next? And so we discussed these. We had presentations from a variety of organizations, like the Canadian provinces came to present multiple times as models, because these are programs that exist currently. And unfortunately, where we landed is there wasn't a sufficient support for a non-exam pathway by the Blue Ribbon Commission. So right now, we're in the process of developing the final report for the group's consideration and approval. That is for the Blue Ribbon Commission to review the report and approve it before it advances to the Supreme Court. However, that does not rule out the ability for us to look at the PLP program to inform some of that. So I think the concerns that were expressed by the Blue Ribbon Commission were that supervised practice may not be the only method for doing this. There were concerns about public protection, looking at also, things like, how long somebody's been in practice. Does this group have more complaints? Do they receive more public complaints than the average population? For all of that, you need more time, right? Some of these programs are fairly new and can't inform to that extent because they've been they haven't had sufficient time. So the idea with options 3 and 4 is to allow a little bit of more time to become more informed. We just don't have enough information to be able to provide that. So while the BRC has not recommended to advance a non-exam pathway, continuing this PLP may be able to inform, if not the BRC, since they're about to complete their final report, at least inform the Supreme Court about that option, because ultimately it is a Supreme Court that's going to be making this determination.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the PLP presentation? All right, great. Thank you very much. Up next, we have the report on BAR Strategies and Stories program. Unfortunately, our planned speaker couldn't be here today, but I believe Natalie is going to provide a quick update on their behalf.
Thank you. So this program was mentioned by Leah in her strategic overview. Many of you have had graduates who participated in either the productive mindset intervention, later called BAR Strategies and Stories, also part of the MILE program, Mindsets in Legal Education. So we wanted to let you know a couple of things. The program is undergoing a transition and it will not be available for the February bar exam, but it will be returning for the July 2023 bar exam. And the sponsorship of the program will be moving from the Mindsets in Legal Education sponsor to the Indiana University Equity Accelerator. This is Indiana University is the home of Dr. Victor Quintanilla, one of the founders of this product. And that IU Equity Accelerator looks at many different ways that equity can be advanced in higher education. And it might be a very interesting institution to look at as we think about the metrics conversation that we heard earlier and the creation of the DEI plans. So we want to thank everyone who has participated in the program. It's really important to have all of you speaking to your students about it. We hope that the graduates have benefited from its success, and we hope you will keep it in your plans, even though there is a brief pause in offering it as of February.
Okay, thank you. Then up next, we have recent developments. Natalie, you're going to start on this one?
I'm actually going to see if we can recognize Lisa Cummins.
Absolutely.
Who will be here to do a little recruiting from the CSBARs, but also from those who are watching in the audience as well, we hope.
Thank you, Natalie. Good afternoon, everyone. So I have provided updates at some previous CSBARs meetings about this project that the bar is undertaking, which is the first year law students exam multiple choice item review project. Well, it's a review of the multiple choice portion of that exam. And so an email blast went out yesterday afternoon, I believe, to all the law schools and people who are subscribed to one of Natalie's broad email lists. We are in need of we'd like to solicit additional reviewers for the second part of our project. So we've completed the first part, which is the review of the content maps for the three subjects on the first year exam, which are contracts, torts, and criminal law, as you all know. So the second part of the project, which is reviewing the actual items that we have in our banks right now, and the item reviewers should have certain qualifications. They are listed in the email blast that was sent out yesterday. I won't read all of them here, but what we're looking at is having two in-person meetings in San Francisco, and two in-person meetings would be two separate groups we'd split the item reviewers into two groups, and on a Saturday in person in San Francisco, hopefully in a date in March or April of 2023. And after those two groups meet for full day meetings on a Saturday, then we would have some virtual reconvene for virtual meetings via Zoom with those two groups to resolve any differences that may have come up during the review of those multiple choice items. So, for any reviewers who would need to travel, the State Bar would reimburse your travel expenses pursuant to the State Bar's travel expense policies. And if you are interested in applying to be an item reviewer, you should click on the link and fill out the application. It's a very short, a few question application that was sent with the email blast yesterday. And we do request that you do so by December 12th. That would be the deadline. And I do want to thank Dean Park, who is a member of our current item reviewers, for your dedication to this project, and looking forward to working with you on the item review. And if even if you are not available, you on the in the CSBARs are not available or interested in doing this project, if you could pass along the information in the blast to any of your colleagues who might be interested, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Okay, great. And if there was anyone who missed that email, how would they reach out to get the info?
They could reach out to me directly. That's fine. lisa.cummins@calbar.ca.gov.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so Natalie, I think now we're off to you.
Sure, we just have one final update, just an FYI for folks who may already be looking at this, but we wanted to make you aware of a recently adopted statute, Senate Bill number 1172. This is the Student Test Taker Privacy Protection Act, which applies to businesses providing proctoring services in an educational setting. It imposes some qualifications regarding the use and disclosure of data for proctoring services. So it's just something that you want to be aware of as you're choosing your proctoring at your law school. And that concludes my recent developments. Thank you.
All right, great. And we have a question from Dean Clancy.
I just wanted to ask for that Senate bill number again, please.
Oh, sure. Yes, that is SB 1172.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, looks like there are no other items on our agenda, so we can wrap up today. Do we need a motion to adjourn, or is that chair's prerogative?
Chair's prerogative.
Okay, so seeing no hands, then I will adjourn this meeting of the CSBARs. Thank you so much for all of your discussion and for the attendance of those in the audience as well.
Thank you, Chair.
It's 2:43 and I'm going to stop recording.
Okay, thank you.